2 murders, 2 countries, 1 killer.
I miss a smile. Just picture that, a face every day, you know, a smile.
Tonight, the detectives behind this international manhunt need your help.
Hello and welcome to Crimewatch. We are live and surrounded by detectives from all across the UK and, for the first time, Holland, all hoping that your calls are going to help solve a major crime tonight. I have to tell you, your calls really do get results. We had a great response last month to our appeal on Claudia Lawrence, the latest on that case, and some other fantastic results coming up. And also on the programme, the police officer mown down in a deliberate hit and run.
I hear people saying the heart's broken, but my heart is broken.
Can you name Mike Silcock's killer? And Rav, who's in your sights tonight?
Right motley crew, including this armed robber, Andrew Moran. He did a runner from court. Can you put him back in the dock?
He threw fundraisers for Hillary Clinton, lived in Gianni Versace's mansion and dated a string of beautiful women. But little did this playboy know that detectives were on his trail. I've got the story of how police caught the millionaire who thought he'd got away with murder.
But first, we need your help on a truly horrendous case. The sexual assault of a young girl. It happened in the small Warwickshire town of Southam last month. Please do watch closely. Her attacker is clearly very dangerous. He needs to be caught tonight.
Okay, tell me in a minute, it's all right.
In February, an innocent young girl was subjected to a sickening sexual assault. The events of the attack are hard to comprehend. The schoolgirl was targeted in the afternoon and in her own home.
My daughter is full of life, very kind, very caring girl, very clever, great sense of humour. She's very, very sensible. She's not a risk taker. She's careful and she's considerate. She finished school, she popped down to the shops to get something, got what she needed, and came back home as normal.
It was around 4:30 when the schoolgirl left Southam High Street. Were you in the area at the time? Did you see anything unusual? Could you have seen the attacker?
As soon as she comes home, she will lock the door, and she knows that the first thing she has to do is to ring her dad to say that she's home and that she's safe. And then the knocking started on the door. The knocking got louder and louder and louder, and it just didn't stop. She started to panic. At that point, she thought there might have been something wrong.
This man wouldn't give up and kept knocking at the door. Inside, all the frightened girl could think of was to tell him to go away.
Your mum and dad said you needed the boiler checking.
They're not back yet.
Well, I'm here now, so I might as well take a look. Is it upstairs?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Is it in the earring cupboard? Can you read the meter for me? I'm just going to check you haven't got any metal on you.
She just completely went into shock. And she was so frightened. This monster was doing these things to her. That was where he first decided to, you know, ruin her life, really.
Maybe it's in the bedroom.
Come and see if it's in here for me.
She was just so frightened that she did as she was told, and she walked down into our bedroom. He made her sit on the edge of our bed, and he came and sat next to her. And that's the point where he then forcibly pushed her back on the bed, put his hand over her mouth, and sexually assaulted her for the second time.
Shut up! Shut up! I'll kill you! I'm wasting my time here. May as well not do this anymore. Do you want me to go? Stay there then. Don't move till you hear me go.
You just almost don't want to believe it's happened, that monster can lay a hand on your beautiful girl. The most precious thing in your life is your child. And I think what upsets us the most is that she must have been so frightened.
But had the man tried this before? Late that afternoon, someone fitting the attacker's description was seen lurking in St James's Road, just a short distance from the town centre.
Excuse me! Excuse me! Can you just come and help me get a picture of the height of this door?
No.
Oh, I can only take a minute.
I can't. I've got to go.
The man we are looking for is a dangerous and determined sexual predator. He's already attacked a defenceless young girl. Help us find him before he preys on another.
The nightmares have just been and continue to be absolutely horrendous. She will shout and scream out in the middle of the night, "Get off me, get off me, get off me." Oh, he's just evil. Sick. You know, I can't understand why somebody would want to do that to any child, but when it's your own flesh and blood, he's completely violated her. You know, that's your baby, who you've brought up and loved and cherished, and how dare he? Who does he think he is?
Indeed, how dare he? I'm joined by Detective Chief Inspector Pete Hill of Warwickshire Police. Thanks for joining us with your team tonight. Just entirely harrowing for this young girl and, of course, for her family now as well.
Absolutely dreadful, and in the safety of their own home. Fortunately, they are a very close family, but they are struggling to come to terms with this, but I know they will come through.
I hope they will. Do you think he deliberately targeted this house?
We simply don't know. He's certainly confident in his approach. He's approached the victim in her home address, and we just don't know whether it was a sexual assault that's gone wrong or a distraction-type burglary.
Ah, OK, and then opportunistically he's ended
Yes.
up attacking her. Do you think he's targeted other people? You hinted at that in the film there.
Again, we don't know. When he approached the victim, he told her that he needed to check for metal. This is quite an unusual comment, and it's possible that somebody may have heard him use this phrase before.
Now, you think this brave young girl has given you a pretty good description. Let's go through it.
Yeah, we're satisfied. She's given us a very detailed description. He's described as being 30 to 40 years. He's got a tanned or weathered complexion. He's got dark, spiky, gelled hair that's greying at the sides. He's wearing a leather jacket similar to this one, but the pockets are described as being slightly lower. Denim jeans and dark coloured walking boots.
And what about this, the battered van? We saw it in the film, there's sort of battered white van. You think he was driving that van, do you?
Yeah, there's certainly evidence to suggest that a van was seen near to the victim's home address, and clearly this could be linked to the suspect. We need to understand what ties this man has got to the Southern area, be it through friends or through work, and clearly we need help from the members of the public to try and find this man before he turns somebody else's world upside down.
OK, Pete, thanks very much for that. It's obvious, isn't it? We need to find this man. If you've got any information at all, I would urge you to call now, 0500 600 600. You can always call the independent charity. It's called Crime Stoppers. You can do that anonymously. I'll give you their number. It is 0800 555 111. If you'd like to see our reconstruction again for any of the details, it's online at bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. For now, though, let's join Rav with the first of this month's Most Wanted.
Right, take a look at this fella. He's really got some front. It's CCTV of my number one. Convicted armed robber Andrew Moran. He did a runner after vaulting over the dock at Burnley Crown Court. Moran has a Mancunian accent and sometimes wears glasses. Number two here is a nasty piece of work. He's Glenn Tranter and he's wanted for 8 charges of sexual offences against children. He has links to Lancashire and the Thames Valley area and could well be working in motorway roadside recovery. He could be driving a green Saab and the registration for that is W69MWF. Now, my number three probably thinks he'll never be caught as he's been on the run for a quarter of a century. But time to think again. Robert Stapleton is wanted for numerous fraud offences, totalling over £5 million. He's originally from Ireland but has links to Holland and France. And 4 here is Nicholas Chun, and police want to speak to him about a violent cash-in-transit robbery in Ellesmere Port, as well as 2 burglaries. 23-year-old Chun was born in Merseyside and has links to Cheshire and Sussex. So, do you know where he or any of the others are hiding tonight? If you do, pick up the phone now, 0500 600 600, or you can text us on 63399. Just type crime, space, and then your message, and it's important to leave that space or your message won't get through. And you can also check these mugshots out online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch. And remember, all of our most wanted stay on the website until they're caught.
Still to come, they died in different countries, 11 years apart, but now police are linking their deaths. Can you name the canal murderer?
What do you think's inside? Nothing in there. It's probably money. Money. It could be millionaires. We're rich.
Help stop the gang of robbers who terrorise scores of pensioners in West Sussex.
It seems that they sort of defiled my house, really.
And how, after a 10-year investigation, this playboy was finally caught for the murder of a quiet caretaker he called a nobody.
Stick him in that chair. See, because you're living here, I can't sell this place.
Now, this is Mike Silcock, and here he is with his mum, Anne. A serving police officer, Mike was known as a very kind and gentle man by his family, his friends, and indeed his colleagues that worked with him. But this time last year, Mike's life was cut short. After enjoying an off-duty drink at the Frog and Railway pub in Stockport, he was killed in a deliberate hit-and-run.
Disney Road, someone's been hit by a car.
Before this happened, we were the perfect family. We were so happy.
He comes, sir.
He's breathing, but he's got a major head injury.
Major head injury.
Breath. Yeah.
He was a 30-year-old man, but he was our boy. He was a child. He was our child.
He's bleeding from his head. That's all I can see from here because he's lying face down.
You hear people saying the heart's broken, but my heart is broken.
Mike was out in the pub in Eton Mersey. I rang him about 11:15, and he was there with his brother having a good time in the pub. About 40 minutes later, we had a phone call to say that there'd been a collision and that Mike was injured, and they thought it was quite bad.
Can you fire police ambulance?
Hello, mate. Can I just report a hit and run in Mersey? It's a gold BMW M3. He was going towards Stockport, and he must have been doing 60, 70.
Poor Mike. Just lay on the bed. The tube's coming out. I have him everywhere. My big strong boy.
I just reached across and kissed him, and then kissed him again. I just remember repeatedly saying, "I love you and I'm proud of you."
We just all stood there while they turned the machines off. You don't expect your children to die before you.
He was in a safe spot between parked cars, and it didn't have to happen. He wasn't drunk, he didn't wander into the road. Someone chose to deliberately drive at him.
And those people used that car as a weapon against Mike when he hadn't done anything wrong. And they've ended a good life, because he was a good lad. Look at our family and see how it's affected us, and think of your family. Dig deep into your heart and think, if that was my child, I'd want to do the right thing and just do the right thing and come forward. If you know anything,
dig deep into your heart, Anne says. Well, I'm joined by Detective Superintendent Mary Doyle. Thanks for joining us, Mary, with your team tonight. Let's hope we get a result. 12 months on, it's entirely heartbreaking what this family have been through. They absolutely deserve justice.
That's absolutely right. You know, they're finding it, as you can see from the film, so hard to move on. They need some justice. Mike was a lovely young man and they were a very close family.
Okay. Let's remind ourselves of the facts, what we know. It was the evening of the 6th of March last year.
That's right.
What else can you tell us?
It's about 11:30 in the evening. Mike was coming out the pub with his friend Sam. It was a Frog and Railway public house in Didsbury Road. They were waiting to cross the road. They hadn't actually stepped into the main carriageway when a witness describes hearing a car accelerate. That car then appeared to deliberately swerve and hit the two young men, throwing Mike 20 foot into the road. They were both seriously injured. Sam obviously survived. Mike tragically died from his injuries.
Let's focus on the car. Let's take a look at a similar car. Tell us what's important, what's distinctive.
It's a gold BMW M3. It's described as yellow. It looks gold, particularly in artificial light. Okay. It's quite distinctive, as you can see.
Yeah, it certainly is. It stands out. You've also got CCTV. We'll see that. And what are we looking at here?
It's about an hour or so earlier on. It's in Stockport. The car is being driven around. That is CCTV from Stockport.
And we can see there seem to be are there a few people in that car?
There's clearly two, but possibly three men in that vehicle at the time, yes.
Now, it's important to say you've got the car, you haven't got the driver.
Yes, we have. It was found burnt out, as you can see, about half an hour after the incident in Heatonmore Golf Club.
Of course, the people in the car are going to know all about it. It was vicious, it was memorable. Do you think they're going to have talked?
They will have talked. We know they've talked. In particular, there was a call we received just after the incident from a young woman. She called the incident room. We've been unable to recontact her, and I would urge her and anybody else who has any information to call us back, and it's in the strictest confidence, obviously.
Thanks, Mary. I should tell you there is a life-changing reward on offer here, £25,000, if you can give us information leading to a conviction. Think about what this has done to Mike's family. I would urge you to do the right thing. 0500 600 600, or you could call the independent charity. It's called Crime Stoppers. You can do that anonymously. That's fine too. Their number, 0800 555 111. For now, let's join Rav with some criminals caught on camera.
We've got villains of all description on this month's CCTV. Preston Park Station in Brighton last April. Hello, who's this? Don't be shy. Over here. Must have been something I said. He hides around the corner and waits. For a victim, that is. When a train arrives, he goes up to the platform, selects an elderly woman and follows her down the steps. He's hot on her heels as she makes her way towards the exit. Then, out of sight of the cameras, he robs her at knife point, making off with her handbag. This was a cold, calculated attack on a defenceless pensioner. Who is he? We're filling up at this Shell garage in Carville, Durham a year ago. But for some people, that doesn't mean a tank of unleaded and a Mars bar. An armed gang of ambushed staff restocking the cash machines. Using a large hunting knife, they threatened to stab the terrified driver, forcing him to open up the van and hand over thousands. This was an organised and violent robbery in broad daylight. But this lot must have inhaled too many petrol fumes, as they left us with plenty of clues. Here's their getaway car, stolen a month earlier in Cheshire. And here's an e-fit of the driver. Bet they weren't expecting that. Names, please. The Lake District now, and we're after this pilfering pair who are wanted for at least 9 burglaries across the county. Here's them in action at the Dale Lodge Hotel in Grasmere last July. They saunter in separately, head for the private staff area, and then help themselves to employees' personal belongings before making a getaway. Later that same day, they also nicked £3 grand from the co-op in Windermere. 2 jobs in one day. They've got some nerve. But though they might be sneaky, they couldn't slip past the cameras. Who are they? Tottenham High Road, North London, last July. This group of lads have been enjoying a few drinks, and one of them is a little worse for wear. He accidentally bumps into a cyclist who isn't best pleased about it. He starts mouthing off, then all hell breaks loose. Out of nowhere, a group of youths launch a ferocious attack. They chase one bloke and set upon him. The victim doesn't stand a chance as he's repeatedly punched, kicked, and then stabbed 5 times, puncturing his lung. He's left bleeding in the road as his attackers make off in this unlikely getaway vehicle. This was a vicious, unprovoked attack. They were armed and could have killed. 4 have already been convicted, but police still need to identify these 2. Stop them tonight. Horrendous. If you know any of them, please pick up the phone now. 0500 600 600, or you can text us on 63399. Just type crime, space, and then your message. And if you need a second look, go online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch.
Now, for the first time ever on Crimewatch, we are joined in the studio by detectives from Holland. In a groundbreaking investigation, they have teamed up with the Met Police to solve the horrific murders of these 2 young women. They strongly believe that Paula Fields and Melissa Halstead are linked in death. Tonight, do you know how they were linked in life?
Wonder where we can sit. This is a good spot. Here, yeah. Here. Right, so you don't know how to cast now? No. What you do is, this is called a barrel arm. You switch that on, and you've got to grab your line. Yeah. And then what you do is you bring it back like this. What's that? Look, that. What's that bag? You get it? What do you think's inside? Oh. Do you need some help? Yeah. Got it. Gosh. What's inside? What do you think's inside? Nothing in there. It's probably money. Money. We could be millionaires. We're rich. We're rich. Gosh. Quick.
Police are investigating the discovery by young children of human body parts in the Regent's Canal in North London. Police divers are expected at the scene near St Pancras Way shortly.
It's nearly 10 years since 6 bags were discovered here in the Regent's Canal. Inside were the mutilated remains of 31-year-old mother of 3, Paula Fields. Her head, hands and feet have never been found, and neither has her killer.
There was 11 children. Paula was the baby of the family. She was a happy child, always had a smile on her face. She'd do anything to help anybody. She was only 9 years old when we lost our mother. But it was when she had her own family, her children, That's when she wanted to move, thinking she could make her life better up in London. And I think it was round about the May of 2000, that's when we started to hear that she was into drugs and prostitution. But it doesn't matter what Paul had done, you know. We're still proud to say she was our sister. It was over the Christmas time and nobody had seen her, which was unusual, or no one has heard from her, which was very unusual. That's when they started to get worried and then went and reported her missing.
Hi, I've come to report my sister missing.
What's her name?
Paula Fields.
When did you last see her?
It was before Christmas at my house. I've got a picture.
A month later, Paula's remains were found dumped in the canal. But despite detectives working on the case for 2 years, they had little to go on, and in 2003, the investigation wound down. Then, out of the blue, 2 years ago, we received a call from the cold case team in Rotterdam. They were investigating a murder that bore a striking resemblance to Paula. Could we be hunting the same killer? 11 years earlier, the dismembered body of a young woman was pulled out of the Westersinkel Canal in Rotterdam. Like Paula, she had been decapitated and her hands had been cut off by the killer. But it wasn't until recently that advances in DNA enabled the Dutch police to identify the body as 34-year-old American Melissa Halstead. Melissa had been scouted as a model when she was 17 and had gone on to travel around the world. In 1985, she moved to England to work as a photographer. 3 years later, Melissa left London to travel around Europe with her boyfriend, settling in Amsterdam. But she would ring home every year on her mum's birthday.
Hi, Mom, it's Melissa. I just called to wish you a happy birthday. Have a good time and take care of yourself. Goodbye, I love you.
That was the last time Melissa rang. The following spring, her body was pulled out of the canal in Rotterdam. 2 young women murdered in 2 different countries, 11 years apart, stripped of their identities and dumped in city centre canals, their head and hands still missing. We don't know how, where, or even when Melissa and Paula were killed. But something must link these victims, and we believe someone here has the answer. We've established they had things in common. We know that both Melissa and Paula lived in London and mixed with similar people. They were lonely, vulnerable young women who attracted violent partners and had been victims of domestic abuse. Both had turned to drugs to escape troubled past. They associated with drug users and dealers. For the first time, we have joined forces with our Dutch colleagues to investigate the killings. Together, we need your help to solve the chilling mystery as to why 2 young women's lives were so cruelly cut short.
I miss her smile. You know, she was pretty, Paula. You know, she was pretty. Just picture that, her face every day, you know, her smile. Just picture it every day.
Well, I'm joined now by DCI Howard Groves, who you saw in the film there. He is heading up the joint investigation, and by Leanne Berenpass. She is the spokesperson for the Dutch police. Thanks to both of you for taking the time to join us. Howard, if I can come to you, first of all, obviously the way that these women were found, the circumstances of their death look entirely similar. Yes. Is it your view that you are hunting a serial killer?
At this moment in time, we would not exclude that as a possibility. But in terms of similarities, they were of a similar age. They were mutilated and they were dumped in a canal. And obviously we have to look at always the possibility that could be a serial killer that we're looking at.
Okay. So the way they died, highly similar. You believe, though, you and your team, that the key to finding out who killed them is to look at the distinct similarities in the way they lived, in their lifestyle.
That was very common in some respects, in that they were both vulnerable women. They lived in London, and they also had violent relationships. So we're really appealing to anybody who may have any information that can put a better picture on their lifestyle. That would obviously be significant for us.
OK, that all makes sense. Then what can you tell us about Paula, the person, and the last few days before she died?
Paula, the person, lived a somewhat chaotic lifestyle. She was a drug user and she was a prostitute. And even though it wasn't uncommon for her not to communicate with her family regularly, we need to identify her movements between mid-December 2000 and February 2001, roughly about the 19th, when her remains were found, because we believe that somebody may have seen or heard from her and is therefore able to give us information in relation to her movements.
OK, that could be crucial. Leanne, over to you now. What can you tell us about Melissa?
Melissa was born in Dayton, in the USA. As a former model, she travelled around extensively throughout Europe. We know she has lived in London for a couple of years at several addresses. She left the UK in 1988 and travelled in Europe as a photographer and a makeup artist. She'd been in Italy and Austria before settling down in Amsterdam in 1989. And 1 year later, her remains were found in a canal in Rotterdam. She was only 33 years old by then. And we really want to know people who knew Melissa here in the UK or may have been contacted by her while she was travelling throughout Europe. Maybe she sent you a postcard, write you a letter, or even called you. If you have any information about Melissa, please contact us.
Briefly, Howard, can I ask you, you don't have very many forensics because of the water, I guess, but tell us a little bit about what you do know. The bags here might be important.
What we'd like to know is whether anybody can recognise this bag. It may be that you lent it to someone, or it may be that you've maybe sold it to someone. If anyone's got any information that may be able to assist us in relation to this bag, we'd be most grateful.
And Leanne, over to you. Melissa's remains, crucially, were also found in a bag. What do you know about that?
Yes, her remains were dumped in a duffel bag. We have established it's of a type of the Dutch Army Force. If anyone knew who has a bag like that before the time Melissa was found in 1990, we would like to hear that.
Okay, and Leanne, you are both appearing on, I suppose I can call it the Dutch version of Crimewatch tomorrow night,
Yes, it is. And we hope that both your viewers and those in Holland will be able to help us solve these tragic murders.
I hope so. Thank you very much to both of you for joining us this evening. Well, you know, it has been many years since both young women were found, but of course the pain remains as strong as ever for their families. If you've got any information, it could make all the difference, no matter how small. 0500 600 600 is the number to call. If you'd like to watch the reconstruction again, to remind you of the details, then go to our website, bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. Now, though, it's over to Rav with some more Faces in the Frame.
Right, my number 5 here is extremely dangerous and needs finding fast. Edward Brame escaped from prison in Lincolnshire 3 weeks ago, where he was serving 3 life sentences for the violent rape and assault of 2 women. Brame uses a number of aliases, including Fever, Marks and Lindsay. He likes the countryside, fishing and motorbikes, and you might recognise his distinctive tattoos, which include a cannabis leaf on his neck and 2 birds on his left hand. 6 is Scott Raphael, and he's wanted in connection with a robbery at a jeweller's in Blackburn. He has links to Southampton and Milepatch, Peckham and Bermondsey in South East London. He's also dangerous and should not be approached, so if you see him, steer clear and just call police immediately. My number 7 is Lei Zhang, and he's wanted for people trafficking, running brothels and money laundering. Not much then. He was arrested but failed to turn up at court and was...
And I saw 3 men coming out of my bedroom, and they pushed me into this room here, and pushed me in here and told me to get in this chair and just stay there. I kept trying to pull my trousers down every time I tried to get out of the chair, you know, so as they can incapacitate me, you know, so as I couldn't do anything.
Now, they had a good search through your private belongings, and they did take some things, didn't they?
Oh yes, they had stolen 2 gold rings of mine, which my mother had given me when I was for birthday presents. But so they were not very valuable, but they had sentimental value to me, you know.
How has this left you feeling?
I just feel nervous a lot of the time. I think, you know, it made me feel uneasy a lot now. and it makes you feel quite unsecure permanently.
OK. And how do you feel about living here now, Derek? This is your home, after all.
Yes, well, I'd really like to move away, but I can't really. Can't afford to move, you know.
Over a 3-week period, the gang went from bungalow to bungalow, stealing jewellery, keepsakes and thousands of pounds. Help us stop them tonight.
Well, I'm joined by DI Stuart Hale. Elderly people, often frail people, do you think cynically, deliberately targeted?
I think that's right. There were 34 offences across 3 areas of Crawley, which is Langley Green, West Green and 3 Bridges. And all the properties targeted are either elderly residents or in areas predominantly occupied by elderly residents.
So a lot of people, and targeted on just 6 nights?
That's right, between the 22nd November and the 15th of December, basically all in the early hours of the evening when it got dark. They either forced their way in or opened a door. But when they were in there, they carried on searching if they were challenged by the elderly residents.
OK, you think you got some pretty good e-fits of this bunch?
Yeah, from numerous witnesses we've collated some e-fits together. It's possible that 2 of them are the same person, but we're keeping an open mind on that. What we do know is at least 3 offenders, but there may be more than 3 people that are in the group, different people offending on different nights.
OK, so they maybe were changed on different evenings, yeah. That's a possibility. Do you think they're local?
We're not sure. The A23, which runs from Brighton to London, actually connects the area and all of these areas here. It's possible people are travelling in or maybe coming to see somebody local or indeed local offenders.
Do you think it's fair to say they must have had a getaway car?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, we've had the sighting of a car, which is a parcel registration number of RT5, which either has a European Union or a Union Jack flag on the number plate on the rear. It's a metallic blue car, a hatchback in style. Obviously, we're keen to try and trace.
Briefly, do you think they've been splashing the cash, these boys, recently?
I think they have. I mean, we estimate they've got about £50,000 in cash from the various burglaries. Right. They're young lads, and I'm sure if they've got that sort of money, they've been spending it on themselves or other people. And if people know about that, we'd like them to come forward. But there was also some £5 notes that were stolen from Derek, some old-fashioned £5 notes that you wouldn't be able to spend, so maybe they took them to a dealer or something like that. So we've got those again. We'd be keen for people to come forward.
Okay. All good, useful information for people to put together. Let's put a stop to this gang. Please do call us now, 0500 600 600. If you've been a victim of crime, there is the victim support line. They're on 0845 30 30 900. Now here's Rav and Matthew with news on some previous cases.
And first, the latest on Claudia Lawrence. Last month, detectives investigating the 36-year-old chef's disappearance from York revealed new leads on the programme. It's been a year since Claudia vanished without a trace, and her father Peter bravely spoke to us about what life's been like without his daughter, as well as his efforts to keep her case in everyone's mind.
How are you managing, and the rest of the family, to cope day to day?
I think basically because of the massive support of the rest of the family, of friends, the church, and support from the whole of the public.
You've got a big day planned for tomorrow. Tell me what you and her friends and family plan.
Yes, it's the idea of Claudia's friends, Susie and Jen, to have a day just to make people aware of the fact that this is still going on, that Claudia's still missing. So we've been given the square in the centre of York. We're letting off loads of balloons with tags on. So hopefully there might be about 400 balloons going up. It's not a celebration, but it's an awareness day of the fact that, this investigation is still going on. We're still trying to find Claudia.
Well, we had dozens of calls on the night, including 2 new witnesses who came forward. Detectives were also able to talk to the owner of the car we appealed on. But crucially, they still need to identify and trace this hooded man, seen here on Claudia's route to work in the early hours of Wednesday, the 18th of March. This could be even more significant, as detectives now believe Claudia was with a mystery boyfriend 2 days before she disappeared.
Information has come to light about the fact that Claudia was believed to have been out with a boyfriend a couple of days before she went missing, into the early hours, probably about 4:30 in the morning. Now that's critical for us because we need to know where was Claudia on that night, who was she with.
If you know anything, however minor, please pick up the phone now. 0500 600 600, or you can text us on 63399. Just type crime space and then your message.
Now, last October we reconstructed the horrific sexual assault of an elderly woman in Carlisle, in Cumbria.
We struggled at the door. I fought like a lion to get him out, and I was screaming. He put his hand over my mouth. Well, there was a finger, so I bit into this finger. And the blood started pouring out.
What do you want? Go now. Go on, off you go.
No.
What do you mean, no?
After this.
Oh, no! Please, no. No,
Just
please,
do
no,
this.
no, no, no,
Just
no.
do this and I'll go.
Oh, no, please, no, 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 please, no, no, no.
Evelyn was subjected to a horrendous and prolonged sexual attack.
Well, we had a phenomenal response. Well over 100 people called us on the night. 4 people recognised and named the attacker there and then from this CCTV. And unbelievably, within 40 minutes of our programme, police were at 51-year-old David Gillen's front door. Well, good news. Last week he was sentenced to 12 years for rape, sexual assault and robbery. Evelyn, as we called her in our film, and her family have given us this message. We would like to thank everybody involved. This includes all residents who cooperated by providing swabs for DNA, the Crimewatch team, along with the viewers who responded to the reconstruction, and to DCI Jeff Ashton and his team for their help, support and hard work throughout the case, leading to justice being done. A great result.
It's now a year since Ahmet Paytak, a father of 3, was fatally shot whilst he was at work in Holloway, North London. Well, last week, a 30-year-old man was charged with Ahmet's murder. He'll stand trial later this year, and we'll keep you updated.
Now, finally, last month we had another great result on Peter Tobin. Detectives from Operation Anagram, who were piecing together the serial killer's life, were desperate to trace 2 women who knew Tobin back in the 80s. Well, within hours of our programme, both women had been identified, located and are now helping police. However, they still need to hear from anyone with information about Tobin. They particularly need to know where he was in 1978. Well, for the latest on the case, including new details of Tobin's life, check out the specially dedicated part of our website. If you know anything that could help police, please get in touch. Our number is there on the screen.
Now, this is Thanos Papalexis, the son of a Greek shipping tycoon who spent years living the high life in Florida. And this is Charles Christodoulides, a quiet, reclusive man who worked as a caretaker in North London. 2 men with 2 very different lives, connected by murder. Matthew takes up the extraordinary story of how detectives finally got their man in a case that took 10 long years to crack.
Come on, ladies, let me show you what I got here. Look at that! You didn't expect that, did you? Oh, look at that! Oh!
In March 2000, the body of a 55-year-old caretaker was found in a dingy North London warehouse. His murder would take detectives on a journey across the world, from the back streets of Kilburn to Millionaires Row in Palm Beach, Florida.
Charles was a kind and gentle man, and his family were absolutely devastated and shocked when they found out that he'd been murdered. He was somebody who went about his business, didn't cause trouble, and had never had any contact or problems with the police at all.
Charalambos Christodoulides, known as Charles to his family, had moved to London in the mid-60s. Although he was highly educated, he was a reclusive character. His days were spent visiting the bookies before heading to Leicester Square, where he'd spend the afternoon watching the world go by.
We looked into Charles's background to try and establish a motive for the murder, and it quickly became apparent that he didn't have any enemies.
Despite detectives gathering a huge amount of evidence and taking hundreds of witness statements, after 2 years they were still no further forward in finding out why anyone would want to kill Charles.
But then Brent Hyatt, a detective with a long history of solving the toughest of cases, was brought in to head up the investigation.
When I inherited this case, it was clear that an enormous amount of work had been done already. This was clearly going to be a very, very difficult case because there were no clear leads.
Brent went right back to the start, poring over every aspect of Charles's life, and something struck him. The recluse had been living in a self-contained flat within a warehouse for 20 years as a caretaker, until he was murdered. Despite it being run down and desolate, it was his home and he didn't want to move. But at the time of his death, it was about to be sold. Did this have something to do with the murder?
Thanos Paplexis, a property developer, had agreed to purchase the warehouse, and at the same time Thanos had agreed to sell the warehouse on to another property developer for a quick profit.
Brent's team started digging into this man's background. The son of a Greek shipping tycoon, Thanos had grown up in North London. It would turn the case around.
He was a man that had come from an extremely privileged and wealthy background, and that on the face of it, he was a very wealthy individual. However, as we looked more closely, it also became apparent that he was a man that engaged in very questionable business practices and owed many people very, very vast sums of money.
It became clear to detectives that if Charles was a sitting tenant and didn't want to move out, Thanos's business deal could have been ruined.
That potentially presented a motive, and therefore we focused our attention on Thanos Paplexis and his activities.
A hunch was one thing, but if police were going to crack the case, they needed forensics to link Thanos to the murder. The team started re-examining over 1,000 exhibits, and there, amongst them, was a key piece of the puzzle.
There was a piece of brown packaging tape with the victim's blood and victim's hair on it. That piece of tape also had Thanos's finger mark on it. But it was also clear to us from the footwear impressions that there were 3 offenders involved in this crime. And the question for us was, of course, who the other 2 were.
Officers started piecing together exactly what had happened to Charles in the warehouse on the night of his murder. He'd been hit over the head before being dragged into a room upstairs.
Stick him in that chair. See, because you're living here, I can't sell this place.
There, he was bound to a chair, beaten and strangled. In order to dispose of the body, the men wrapped him in a blanket, poured paint stripper over him and tried to set him alight. When this failed to work, they hid the body in a car inspection pit.
We gave some consideration to arresting Thanos. We had sufficient evidence to do so, but it was clear that the other 2 offenders were unidentified at that time, and our concern was that if we'd have arrested Thanos without knowing who the other 2 were, that Thanos may have contacted them, and then we may well have lost them forever.
But while police were hot on Thanos's trail, he was 4,000 miles away.
With his business failing and blood on his hands, he'd fled the country soon after Charles's murder. He was literally a world away from North London, enjoying the high life of a playboy in Miami.
And what a life he led. He set up a business, became part of the Palm Beach elite, and began hosting celebrity parties. He was even living in the former home of Gianni Versace.
Whilst Thanos was living this extravagant lifestyle in Palm Beach, our investigation in London continued, trying to get sufficient evidence to build the case against Thanos so that we could arrest him. 3 years into the investigation, we had a breakthrough via the DNA database, and we ascertained the identity of one of the other 2 outstanding suspects.
In an incredible turn of events, an Albanian builder called Ilizello had been arrested on possession of cannabis. His DNA matched some found on a cigarette butt at the murder scene, and his footprints matched those from the warehouse. It was a huge step forward.
Meanwhile, Thanos was totally oblivious to the fact that the net was tightening around him. His lifestyle in Florida was becoming more and more extravagant as he began mixing with the rich and famous.
Yeah, I got this dinner. Did I tell you about it? For Hillary Clinton. It's a fundraiser. We got like, I think it's $250 a ticket with like champagne, caviar. It's going to be seriously awesome. I think you should go.
And his claims about his former life were equally audacious. Dating former porn star Rebecca DeFalco, Thanos maintained that he led a James Bond lifestyle.
He told her that he was a secret agent working for MI6. He'd also confessed to Rebecca that he'd been involved in a murder, a man that he described as a nobody.
I got another mission at work.
Ooh, exciting, a mission. So have you ever actually killed anyone?
Yeah, I killed somebody.
Like, really?
It was this guy who was getting in the way of a deal, a big property deal. Me and a couple of Albanians went down, we took him out. Except the Albanians couldn't do it, so I killed him myself. Strangled him. Look, he was a nobody. He was old. No one's ever gonna notice.
But back in the UK, Brent and his team were closing in.
We had another hit on the DNA database which identified Robert Baxia. He'd been arrested in London for a minor drugs offence. We found that one of the plastic bags that had been used to wrap Charles' body carried Baxia's fingerprint, and that gave us the identity of our third offender, and it meant that we could move to the arrest stage of this investigation.
Nearly 9 years after Charles's murder, US Marshals marched into a pizza restaurant in Miami. There, sat at a table, was Thanos Papalexis. His past had just caught up with him.
It's good to meet that director. You really did. I thought they looked fantastic.
Mr. Papalexis, we're arresting you on suspicion of murder.
But even when he'd been extradited and was back in the UK, Thanos still thought he could talk his way out of it.
In interview, Thanos was extremely talkative, very, very calm, exudes confidence, very, very sure of himself, and absolutely convinced that once he'd given his version of events, that he would be released.
The homicide branch here has charged me with murder on the premise, I believe, that I killed somebody in order to close a deal and therefore gain some money and a financial advancement from it. I would say that that is not only untrue, but that is provably untrue.
But despite his best efforts, he still couldn't stop the case from going to court. And among the witnesses was Thanos' ex-girlfriend, Rebecca DeFalco, who was able to recount the murder as told to her by Thanos 5 years earlier.
Do the job, but he finished it off and basically strangled this guy and then disposed of the body.
It had taken 10 long years to bring Thanos Papalexis to justice, but after a 4-month trial, the jury was unanimous, guilty. From Kilburn to Florida to the Old Bailey, this millionaire playboy who thought he'd got away with murder had finally been nailed.
This was a long and difficult case for everybody involved, and that I think we all feel relieved and a sense of satisfaction that we now have some justice for Charles and for Charles' family.
What about that? And all for a property deal, really?
Yeah, in cold blood, with his own hands. It was astonishing. You know, he was obsessed with portraying himself as a rich, successful businessman, cold, arrogant, who just looked at someone like Charles, a bit of a loner, and thought somehow he didn't count.
And what about, I mean, it's quite a sort of half-assed way of getting rid of the body, isn't it?
Yeah, he intended to go back, but the whole deal collapsed. Thanos couldn't raise the money, and that meant he couldn't get access again to the warehouse, leaving all of those forensics. But it was a tough job for police. They had to search 29,000 square feet of this derelict site, but eventually that gave them one fingerprint and one cigarette butt with DNA, which was so crucial, but it was real needle in a haystack.
Yeah, I mean, he was an entirely incapable businessman, it would seem.
Yeah, he was hopeless. He didn't know what was going on. What he did know was that he was drowning in debts. His father already had bailed him out for £750,000. That's why this deal was so important for him.
But, I mean, Gianni Versace's mansion, it doesn't get much bigger than that. He was living the highest of the high life.
Yeah, but it was exactly the same formula, this aristocratic persona, but behind it, scams and cons, dozens of people chasing him for millions of dollars, and also loads of court settlements and threats of being sued, and there were threats of violence as well. We spoke to one journalist in Miami, and he was saying that he was looking into his background, but Thanos threatened him, threatened his family unless he backed off. That's how he funded this lifestyle. Now he's doing life with a minimum of 20 years.
Unbelievable. Matthew, thank you. Now over to Rav with a quick roundup of what's been happening on the phones. It's been busy.
Well, lots has been happening on the phones. Let's start off with the Southam sex attack in Warwickshire. The poor young girl who was assaulted in her home. We've had a great response, a number of calls. It's rising all the time. We've had the same name, in fact, has come up twice on that attacker, which is great. Then very quickly I'm going to tell you, Mike Silcock, the hit and run, the serving police officer that was killed up in Stockport. A number of calls, the same name come up again and again. We need someone to come forward, help the police, leave your number. The SIO will speak to you about special measures. Please call back.
That's all we've got time for now. Details on all of tonight's cases, you'll get them online, bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. You can log on right now for a live update on what's been happening on the phones. I think it's been a really busy night tonight. The lines, they're open until midnight. They open again tomorrow morning at 7:30. Our next programme, well, that's going to be on Monday, the 26th of April. Please don't go away, of course, because we'll be back tonight after the news with a full update on tonight's cases. If you can help, but you haven't called yet, please do it now. It could all be down to you. We'll see you at 10:35. Until then,